even worse. And if it's really, really tall and there's stuff pointing all over the place, it's really hard to keep track of things. So some of the things that you can do to make this a little bit less messy are you can pull, or you can commit and push or pull and commit rather, as often as you possibly can, because that downloads changes a lot and merges them as soon as you possibly can. So it doesn't make the graph extremely big. And if you're committing often, then that's good for you because you're keeping track of your code and you have a lot of backups of it. So I think I'm going to send this PowerPoint to everybody in the group, especially since a lot of people couldn't make it here today. A couple of the really good resources. Now I think you're at a point where you can go and look at like online tutorials and not be intimidated by them. Like the same way you can look at like C code or Python code and be like, oh, I get what that's doing. Now if you go and look at a Git tutorial with a bunch of commands, hopefully you can look at that and understand what it's doing. So the Atlassian Git tutorial is probably the single best reference, I think, because it's organized by command. So now that you've seen some of those commands, you know what they are. And it explains what every command does with the same sort of pictures that I showed here, which are like the more detailed, how it actually works sort of thing. And Scott Chacon, who's a developer on GitHub, I think, has a presentation on Git, and if you search Git on YouTube, you'll find it. And I think it's really great, and it goes into even more depth about how Git works, like the internals of it, and I think that's really cool. So thanks, Eric, for helping me put this together, and thank you for listening. Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Another important.
That was very helpful. Yeah. That'll be very, very important for us as a group. One thing I want to emphasize is if you do run into issues with GitHub, and for example you run into issues being able to pull or push or merge, and you don't know how to solve it, contact somebody and ask me or Subhav or someone else in your team and have them help you solve it as fast as possible, because if you don't and you wait, the longer you wait, the more difficult it's going to be to resolve those conflicts, because you saw with the chain of commits, it's going to just get longer and longer, and that's how much further you are from the actual current setup on the development machine. So if you keep waiting to try to resolve a conflict, you say, oh, it's okay, it'll fix itself. It's not going to fix itself, and it's going to get a lot harder to fix it. So if you do run into issues, don't be afraid to ask. I know GitHub can be kind of confusing at first, or just Git in general can be confusing at first. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask. In fact, I would advise you to ask as soon as you run into an issue and you don't know how to solve it.
Yeah, there are a couple of things I didn't mention, especially for this project or any project where you're storing stuff online. It's, excuse me, it's a really good idea not to commit like binary files, so compiled code, for example, or images even, because what happens is you're saving all of these versions of this image. Even if you're making small changes, you're saving these versions of images or videos, and Git does a really bad of compressing that and sending it out to everybody in a way that's really efficient. So that's not extremely helpful, right?
And also because they take up a lot of space,
yeah,
it can slow down pull and push. We talked about this earlier. But exactly. Yeah, it can almost double the size of a repository for one video, and that increases the amount of time that it takes to pull and push and everything by a lot.
Another related to that, you have a problem, you should ask soon. You should focus on one thing at a time. You should say, I'm going to work on this feature, I'm going to fix this bug, and work on it, and commit and then push. Because if you work on several things at the same time, you probably will not finish quickly, right? And then that means you are not going to push very soon, and people are making progress. So by the time you push a few weeks later, people already made so much progress, your push is going to be incompatible with other people's work. So you should focus on one thing at a time. Does that make sense? Focus on one thing at a time and make it work. And of course you should commit along the way. Commit is not visible for other people. Push is. But so you should commit as often as you want. But after you feel comfortable, you should push it so that people can see what you have done. If you don't push, then what you do is not visible to other people. And the longer you wait, the more chance you push will create problem to other people.
Yeah. So Git has a lot of commands that let you do some really neat stuff with that data structure, that Git graph. of the commit history, so you can like squash some commits together before you push them, for example. There are a lot of things you can do to rewrite history, and if you're curious about that, you can look it up online. Generally, it's a bad idea to be too liberal about that, because if you rewrite something that's on GitHub already or on wherever your shared repository is, then it's going to get mad at you and not let you push stuff. So as long as you're careful about that, I'd encourage you to look that up so it makes you want to commit more often, because that's always a really good thing.
Can you go to GitHub? We also have some nice features there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've disabled issues and stuff on this repository, but I can go to the big data ones.
Maybe you can go to Big Data.
Sure. So
And then,
if you want to just view that graph, it's in the section called graphs down here. And if I go to network, then I can see the actual graph of everything that's going on. So there's development down here, and master over here, and a testing branch, which is something that we use. But there are also some really neat features of GitHub, which aren't really especially Git related, but really useful for software projects.
for example, you can use issue to keep track. I think we started using issue. Can you click?
Yeah.
Yeah, we start using issue. You can assign, if you look very carefully,
So
just,
one of the things, if I create a new issue, I can.
yeah, you can assign, look at this, you can assign to a particular person to work on. And this person may close the issue, and then you can explain what the issue is about, and then there's here, you can say it's a bug, or it's enhancement, or it's a feature.
And that's extremely useful. You can also tag people by going,
Yeah.
hey, Eric, or Eric, I want to be able to, or I want to ask you a question about this feature that I'm working on, or that I've assigned to somebody else. Right. So that's really useful. So that's one of the really useful GitHub features. The
And-
other one that we use a lot is the wiki,
The wiki, yes.
and that's
Yeah, probably more than,
45 pages.
how many pages? 145 pages now. Right.
It's a really good place to put documentation, as opposed to, for example, putting a Word document on the repository itself. You have to keep track of versioning that, and like, you can't put images on it, for example, or you might not want to put images on it because it'll make pushing and pulling take longer and it won't compress properly. So the wiki on GitHub has none of those issues. We just put whatever we want here, and it's a great place to document stuff.
It's basically an HTML page, if you know what that is. Yeah, everybody should know HTML, right? Because this project is about HTML. And actually, this is also, you can also link, so you can write a wiki page that links to other wiki page. That's very helpful. Any comments, questions? All right, thank you.